It is time to find a church in Texas. This is my very first episode that I am recording from my home in Houston, Texas. And as of today is Thursday, May 23rd. And of course, in a couple of days, I'm going to church. And so I wanted to have a conversation with you today about how I am finding a church home in Houston, Texas. Oh boy. Welcome to the You, Me, and Jesus podcast. On this podcast, I share all about my experiences growing up with God, growing into the calling that God has had on my life, and experiencing the supernatural. When you're listening to this, you're going to hear from me as well as many of my friends talk about all the experiences we have with God. Some of the things you're going to hear are going to make you go, what? I cannot believe that happened. Other things are going to make you cry, and some things are just going to make you laugh. But you're going to hear all about how we experience God. The goal of this podcast is to help you hear God clearer, get closer to God, and experience all of the supernatural. And so thank you so much for listening to the You, Me, and Jesus podcast. So welcome back to another episode of the You, Me, and Jesus podcast, where we talk about all things you, me, and Jesus. And today, like I said, we are having a conversation about me finding a church in Houston, Texas. So if you are in Houston, say hi to me on any of the socials. I am adamantly, hardcore, going out and finding new friends because I'm a social person and I want to meet people and all the things. Okay. All right. So obviously, I love Jesus. And so, I need to be in a church where I'm tithing, building community, growing, worship, and all the things. And so when I knew that I was coming back to Houston, I started asking myself a series of questions, and of course, one of them is, where am I going to go to church? Now, one of the things I did years ago when I first came to Houston is I posted on Facebook and I was asking people, where do you recommend that I go to church? And people started giving me a series of different churches. And what I did was I just started going to them each Sunday. And honestly, I became extremely exhausted. I became very sad and irritated that I wasn't finding what I was looking for. Now, listen. I am not out there looking for the perfect church by no means, but I was looking for a certain type of church. When I first moved to Houston, I was started to experience things that I had never experienced before. There were things that, the gifts of the Spirit. I was starting to experience those things and I didn't understand what was going on. And so when I was going to these different churches, I still left feeling confused about the gifts of the Spirit because the churches I wasn't going to, they weren't teaching them. It wasn't a regular part of their church experience, which is fine. And that just meant that wasn't the right place for me. So it took a while. It took a while for me to finally go, okay, God, whatever. And so I started to use my power of networking and I started reaching out to people that I knew attended churches like what I'm looking for. And I asked them who they knew that would connect me with churches in Houston. And so eventually I landed on a church here in Houston and I grew a lot there. I went to ministry school there and everything. Now, the thing is that I cannot go back to that church. And man, there's a potential that people that go to that church will hear this episode at some point in time. That's why I'm not going to say the name of it. But I cannot go back to that church. And the reason I cannot go back to that church is I had 2 meetings with the pastor. And they were really bad meetings. And we had conversations because there were some things that he was saying from the pulpit that was just really borderline racist. I wasn't sure, but I was I think because he likes me and I like him, I'm maybe he'll have a meeting with me. And so he decided yes for us to have a meeting. And we have these two meetings that both lasted like 3 hours long. And I left there just in shock, like just in shock. Like I remember one of the last things he said to me was that Black people only know how to read because we read to them. Okay. And so I will not be going back to that church. Okay. And that's all I will say about that. So I know better than to post on social asking people to tell me where I should go to church, because the people in Houston that I know, a lot of them, are affiliated with that church, may still go to that church, may be at ministry school at that church or whatever. And I'm just like, we're not going there. Second thing is, I understand that we are in a political season, so that we have the election 2024 happening this November. And the last thing I want to experience is being at church and them pushing their agenda, because I don't believe that God is Democrat or Republican. I believe that God is God, and we created this system here in America. And so I don't want to be in church being like pushed someone's agenda, like, how do I say this? So oftentimes how do I say this in a good way? So people will push different agendas. You've got the conservative agenda, and there's a whole list of things there. And you've got the liberal agenda, and there's a list of things there. Both of them have great things on their list, and both of them have questionable things on their list. And so oftentimes you'll have one group that says, as an African American or as a woman, I should be with them because I should be believing in this and this and this and this and this. And then we have those that are on the conservative side, and also, that are like, well, we are against abortion and this and this and da 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 da. And it's like, yes, and, So because I know that we're in that season, the last thing I want to do is be experiencing people's political agendas. But I also know I can't control people. I can't control what the pastor does, what he says. I can't control who he's going to put in his pulpit. You know what I mean? Who he's going to bring up and endorse and all that. Cannot control that whatsoever. So I have to have that understanding that no matter which church I choose or which place that I go, that any of them could be operating under an agenda. And I have to just come to terms with the possibility of that. Okay. So as it pertains to me finding a church, one of the things that I did before I left San Diego is the church that I was going to, I asked them who they knew in Houston. And they said, oh, here's this church. We visit there when we come. We like him, da, 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 whatever. So this Sunday, I am actually going to attend that church, right? And just get an experience of that church. I won't necessarily judge it or whatever, but I'll come into an environment, I'll be in the environment. And as I'm in the environment, I'll have conversations with God. When I leave the environment, I'll have conversations with God and see what he says. From there is another church that I am aware of. I love the pastor, but I'm not sure if that's the place where I will go. And one of the reasons is because, this is me being transparent, is because obviously I'm Black. That church is 99.9% not Black, right? And I am used to going to a multi, racial church, and because we're going into a political season, last thing I want to do is be in an environment that's all white. And then here I am and, whatever. Because I remember in 2020, when everything went down with George Floyd, being murdered, the church started, all the things happening in the church. And that was also a political year. So I'm going like, okay, I don't know if I want to walk back into that environment and not know what's going to be happening in that church during that time, Also, if I can be candid, since this is my podcast, I feel some type of way, and God will talk to me about this, but I feel some type of way because I have known, let's just say a pastor and people in that church for the last 5, 6, maybe 7 years. And of those 7, when I've been in California for the last 5 years, I haven't heard a peep. So it's kind of like, out of sight, out of mind. Hey, you're not here at the church anymore. We're out of relationship. And I find that doesn't make me feel I wouldn't say I feel unsafe, but it doesn't make me feel good that, the only time we would have a conversation is if I go to your church. The last time I heard from that pastor was when George Floyd was murdered, and I was online sharing all of my stories, and I got one text, maybe two from him, and then I haven't heard from him in 4 years, and I know he's busy all day, every day. I get it. No big deal. But I still have the awareness that I have not heard from you since George Floyd was murdered. So why am I going to trust you with me? Because when I look at church, and this is going to be the hurt me and I'm just talking, but when I look at going to church is I am inviting this church, this ministry, the people that lead the church to speak into my soul, right? Like I will be a part of small groups. And so it's like, do I trust those people that's leading small groups? When just all the things, you know what I mean? I think the pastor is a great person, hands down, 100%. At the same time, I have to ask myself that question. How do I feel? Could I be in that environment and not feel jaded? Could I be in that environment and not feel like they're only connected with me because now I'm here, or other reasons, like we're on social media together and all the things. And the only time that he or people from his ministry started to respond to my content was when I said I'm moving back to Houston. And when that happened, I started getting likes and comments, and I'm going, are you guys trying to draw me back into your church? Because I ain't heard nothing from y'all all these years, and we've been connected for a long time. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying that that's the case, but that is me and my heightened awareness of my feelings and stuff. And so I am 100% going to have lots of conversations with God, if the church that I go to this Sunday is not the one, and if God starts talking to me about going to the other church or the pastor I was just telling you about, before I ever step into that church on a Sunday, I will probably reach out to him and I'll say, hey, so I am considering coming to your church, but I would like to set up maybe a 30-minute meeting because I have some feelings that I want to share with you, because if I'm going to be there, I need to feel safe. I need to know that whatever, you know what I mean? And this is a smaller church. It's not like it's huge or whatever. But I'm like, I feel like we all, like, how do I say this? I feel like we all could do that with everything that we do. Okay. For example, when you go for a job interview, like they're not just interviewing you, you're interviewing them. You have to ask yourselves, do I want to bring my time and talent to this company? Do I want to help this company grow with my experience, right? Not just them pay you to bring your experience. And so when I'm looking at going to a church, it's like, I'm not just going, I'm not just attending, I'm not just tithing, but I am tithing. I'm going to tithe no matter what, but I am going to give what I earn to your church. Why is this the place that I should be? Not to have anything to do with money, but is this the place where I feel safe? I'm going to be cultivated and all the things, right? When it comes to outside of tithing, if I'm going to spend my time there and I'm going to join any kind of ministry or serve, I get to ask the questions of, is this the place where I want to bring my gift, my time, my energy? Like we get that. I feel like we have that right to do that because it's our time and our energy, Now, obviously, I would not come to him in the way that I'm talking to you today, but I would come to him and just say, hey, I have been contemplating this since before I moved back, and I have some things that I want to talk to you about and see how he handles it. Now, if I know him the way that I think I think he'll handle it well. Does that mean that I will still go to that church? No. It just means that I think that I can have an honest conversation with him and we can have a dialogue, Now that other church that I went to, no. I tried that twice and it was just bad. It was just bad. I was just like, I was in shock. That woman was too stunned to speak. Anyway, that's a TikTok sound. And so that's the journey that I am going on to find a church in Houston. Now, it is important to know that, let me talk to you about what I'm looking for in church. Okay. So I am used to an environment that there's not just one person that prophesies, that many people in there have learned how to hear God and are able to prophesy, right? I am used to an environment where people are always praying for people at the altar. People are always praying for healing. Like the worship team is calling for healing. The worship team can hear God and they can speak what God is saying. That, we believe in all the gifts of the Spirit, all the fruits of the Spirit. That if joy breaks out in the sanctuary and people start to laugh, that it's not a disruption to the service, that it's a normal part of ministry, because joy is one of the fruits of the Spirit, right? I'm used to people who can feel God's presence in their hands where it's hot or it's wind or whatever, these like supernatural type experiences. And so I'm looking for an environment like that, but also for an environment that is more seasoned than me, because I'm like, I don't know a whole lot. I know a little, and I want to constantly be growing in regards to that and those gifts and hearing, and all that type of stuff, So I don't want to come to a place where I'm the one that has gone through school, because it's like, no, I will bring whatever I am bringing, but I need to receive, not just want to receive, but I need to receive. And so that is what I'm looking for. And, I know that oftentimes when I talk to people about this, they go, well, maybe you're in a season of this. And I'm like, no, I'm not. No. How do I know? Because I know from all the conversations God and I have had over and over and over again, I know. That's why I decided to leave, Jesus Culture San Diego. I love Pastor Zach. I love Jesus Culture in theory, but it was not the right church for me, because the mandate on Zach is to minister to the young people. It's like the teens and the young adults. It's not people in their 40s and 50s. So I was not growing there. I loved them and I loved worship there, but I was not growing not one bit, because their mandate is focused on the younger people. I get it. So their job is to do what God is calling them to. And then my job is to go and find a place that's going to help me with what he's doing with me. Now when I was at Bethel Church, that church constantly stretched me. I was like, whoa, I'm just constantly being stretched. But that is their thing. That is who they're focused on, people who want to grow and So, but JC San Diego just was not that. And that is okay. It just means that it wasn't for me, So I left and went to another place that was constantly stretched at, And so here in Texas, like, I want to constantly be stretched. I want to bring my gifts and talents, but I also want to receive. I don't want to come there and be the social media influencer. I don't want to come there and they're pulling on me as the social media gifts. No. I want to come there, and if I never serve a day in my life, I am growing, right? But I want to serve. Okay. And want to donate my time by serving in church. Okay. So that is what I'm doing. So once I go to the church on Sunday, and then if God said that's not the one, and then once I have a conversation with that pastor I was telling you about, then, if that's not the one, then I'll continue on, my search or what have you. But I feel like when we plant in a church, that you're opening up your entire soul, your entire being to this place, this ministry. It's not about money, but you're opening you up for them to pour into you, pull whatever. And I feel like it is our responsibility to be diligent about where we're spending our time, who's teaching us, who's doing all these things with us. Because if we're not, then we're relying on people to whatever. And you know what I'm saying? So that's what we're doing. So I will definitely update you in a couple of weeks once I've gone to this church on Sunday. If this is not the one, then once I talk to that pastor, that way we can just continue on what it is that I'm doing. Okay. So hope you enjoyed this episode and make sure you leave a review. Thanks for listening to the You, Me, and Jesus podcast. I'm so honored and thankful that you have chosen to listen to this with us. What we would love more than anything next is for you to write a review. When you write a review on iTunes or Spotify, it actually helps the podcast be found by more people. So if you can do us a huge favor and give us 5 stars and write a review, and feel free to tell us what you loved about the episode. Thank you for being here. We're praying for you. We love you, and we pray the best for you and your life.